wabarakatuh. For those of you who are joining us over the airwaves on 87.7 FM, those of you also joining on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and those of you who are also on Insta Live, where you can catch me, Imran Rawat on Instagram, or my wife, Asiya Parekh. And we've also got a special guest, my brother-in-law. And today, as the title goes, we are going to be talking about love and other drugs. And that might sound a little controversial, but you'll get to know why as we go on. And inshallah, I encourage you all to dial in on the studio line if you have any questions or want to actually dispute or contradict something that I might say. Feel free to call in on 0116 4822086 or SMS and WhatsApp 077 488 55055. And you can call in anonymously if you like, or you're welcome to make yourself known and speak freely as well. So inshallah, today we're going to be talking about love and marriage and the other kind of principles and emotions and everything else that kind of feeds into love as an emotion. What we, before I actually get into that as well, what I want to say is that myself personally, I am a mental health counselor and I practice under a company called Eclectic House. You can find them on Instagram as well. And I've been practicing now for some time. And I'm a youth specialist and also a male specialist. And we practice from the Islamic Rule and School of Psychology. And that's from Quran and Sunnah. So inshallah, everything that we speak about, as much as it might be in relation to maybe dunya and worldly kind of matters, it's also in line with, as we understand it, the Islamic school of thought. So, love, Asiya, Muhammad, what are you guys saying? What's love all about?
So I'll introduce myself first.
Feel free.
I'm Asiya. I'm Imran's long-suffering wife. We've been married coming up to 10 years now. You guys might know me. I host my own radio show on Ramadan FM. I was on this morning at 10 a.m. I work for Leicester Hospitals Charity. I'm a corporate fundraising officer. And Muhammad is my brother. So I'll let him introduce himself. But that's the only introduction he needs.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I am the brother of Asiya.
And that's it. Told you.
He's my younger brother, and he's also married. And I thought it'd be interesting to have him on, as he's younger than me and Asiya. And we've had an extensive conversation about just how young he is tonight. But that's for a different story.
Or just how old I am.
Or just how old Asiya and me, we both are. But I mean, me and Asiya, we've been married for almost 10 years, inshallah, this year. Muhammad and his wife have been married for
2.5 years.
2.5 years, yeah. So fairly young marriage and fairly young individuals as well. And I wanted to get that kind of diverse and broad kind of opinion when I start talking about things like love. So when we're talking about love, I mean, people, it's one of those things that everyone's looking for. Everyone's trying to find a partner. Everyone's trying to find their one in this world, who they can grow old with, who they can enjoy with, all these kind of things. But a lot of pressure nowadays, at least, and I mean, I didn't feel it. There's a lot of pressure for people to kind of find a partner. There's a lot of pressure for people to kind of find this, and people are struggling to kind of find what they're kind of looking for. How do you guys feel about that?
You want to go first?
I mean, myself, I didn't feel that sort of pressure that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, it came about.
It happened, yeah. It just happened.
Yeah.
And I think I'd pretty much say the same. It like, you don't force it. You don't go like kind of like placing all these kind of barriers and standards from the kind of get-go. The funny thing about it is that me and Asiya, for those of us who know us, are two very different individuals. We're two
chalk and cheese.
Yeah, we're chalk and cheese. We're two different poles of
I'm
the kind
cheese.
Of. You can be the cheese. I'll be the chalk. That's fine. Plain and simple. Yeah, we're two very different people. And on paper, people might think that it shouldn't work, because when you like, a lot of people are kind of like on Muslim dating platforms and stuff like that, where you're like, saying, I do this, I do that, I want someone like this, I want someone like that. If you go and place these kind of standards, what happens a lot of the time is that you limit the scope of people who might be available to you, so to speak. And what that does is like, it puts you in a kind of echo chamber, and it's like sometimes you think something is bad for you when in reality is good for you, and something you think is good for you in reality is bad for you. That's from Hadith. That's from Quran. And it goes for looking for a partner as well, right? Like, just because I don't maybe in particular kind of resonate with an opinion that Asiya might hold, doesn't mean that we can't see eye to eye on it. And it's a matter of sometimes just living and let live, like live and let live kind of thing.
Yeah, agree to disagree. It's a big part of marriage.
Agreeing to disagree, compromise, and that kind of thing is a factor in marriage. And marriage isn't just made up of the likes and dislikes and just how well you kind of get along together. It's about the compromises that you make, just so that you can have that kind of opposing point of view sometimes, and you can have that person that challenges you and that person that makes you think, because you fall into a place of complacency otherwise, right? Have you found that?
A little bit, yeah.
What do you think about it?
So, it was when I got married towards the start.
His wife is also in the studio with us, by the way.
Towards the middle, well, at the beginning, it was like the small things, getting used to compromising and being in the middle. Like, if I agree on something and she doesn't agree on it, then both have to find a way to agree.
Or not.
Yeah.
Have to find a way to live with what you don't agree with for yourself and for the other person. Sometimes it's small stuff, sometimes it's really big stuff. Me and Imran have had many fights over 10 years, over small stuff, over big stuff, over all kinds of different things. But a fight doesn't necessarily mean that if it is resolved when you've both come to a resolution on the same thing. A resolution sometimes is two completely different things. And if you're fine with that, if I know that I can have my opinion, Imran can have his opinion, you'll have your opinion, Dua will have her opinion. And if you can live with that and you can move forward on that basis, that is a massive part of marriage.
And it's majorly important because of the fact that when people talk about two halves coming together and marriage being half of your deen, it's half of your deen when two whole people come together. If you understand yourself completely and you have set your standards to the point where you know yourself and you're not going to compromise on yourself going into this marriage. Otherwise, what happens a lot of the time, and you might be aware of certain marriages like this, where one person or both people just get walked all over, and standards need to be compromised massively. And compromise isn't I get what I want and you don't get what you want, and sometimes you get what you want and I don't get what I want. It's where both sides are fully happy and completely happy. Like, say for instance, it's a matter of alone time. Me and Asiya have had this conversation a few times because, again, we're two opposite ends of the spectrum, and I really enjoy my alone time.
Oh, hang on, here we go. Here comes the Pakistani. The man is always right. Big wax.
Is that big wax?
Yeah.
The man is always
whatever,
right.
Big wax. Whatever. We saw what happened to you the other day when you went up against me. You want to go? You want to do that again?
Maybe we should get him in the studio.
Yeah, maybe.
Big Wax, if it's fighting talk, please come to the studio and we can get you in here and we can put gloves on. Between you and Asiya, not me. Like you said, the man's always right. I'm happy with that. But you know what? If you're talking about the man's always right, then you get into the argument of masculinity and femininity. Now, I don't know. Like, let me start with you guys. Like, what do you guys have as opinions regarding masculinity and femininity, Asiya?
In general, or?
Yeah. Just in general, or in marriage as well?
I think it's important. I mean, this is my personal opinion, and I don't base it on anything in specific, but you know, there's certain roles that women play and men play in marriages, in life, whatever that might be. A lot of them have been assigned to us. A lot of them are built into our DNA. But I disagree with the whole notion of feminism to a certain extent. I disagree with men not being men if they're not masculine enough, and women not being women if they're too feminine. I don't like that particular notion. I have traits that could be, just like now there with Big Wax. I went.
Yeah. I love that, and I love that. That's a great opinion. Before you go any further, I want to hold you there because I love that.
I've said something wrong.
No, absolutely not.
That's normally what happens. I say something wrong and he stops me. So you can understand my confusion.
I won't say anything yet. Muhammad, what's your opinion on it?
I don't really have much of a big opinion on it. It's just most of us, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, if we base it off our parents, how we've seen them, like, in their marriage, like, most of us tend to go off, like, how our fathers were in a man's perspective and how our mother would be in a female's perspective. That's how I see it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Two great opinions. Now, I'll start off with the fact that from an Islamic perspective, Islam doesn't have much to say about masculinity and femininity in general, because as we know it, our Prophet used to sew his own clothes, he used to make his own food, he used to clean up. And if we look at it from a cultural perspective, like you said, in terms of our parents, sometimes it's like the woman cleans up, the woman's in the kitchen. Sorry, fighting words those are, I know. But those are the cultural kind of norms that people have kind of grown up with, and it's easy to fall into the trap of those sometimes because that's, as you say, what our parents used to do. Now, like I say, Islam doesn't have a lot to say about it because as men and women, we're allowed to embody what we need to embody as individuals when we need to. I know some of the greatest chefs who are men. I know some of the greatest women like Asiya.
We've got
who
a chef
are
on my
professionals.
live, by the way, and she's not a man. So.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Big up,
Hi,
Chef
Zainab.
Big up, Chef Zainab. And yeah, I mean, it's a case of like, there's no particular kind of masculine and feminine roles. As men, though, I think it's ingrained in us to a certain degree where we are kind of kings and warriors. And when we're in our kind of spiritual realms, maybe like magicians and that kind of stuff. I say magician quite loosely. You take it as you will. But yeah, there's no kind of, I mean, as we understand it today, like a lot of our wives as married couples in the West are working women. And maybe based on gender roles or culture, that wouldn't have been something that's quite taboo. That's something that's not quite normal. So when it comes to masculine and feminine roles, I think that it's really easy to fall into the trap of them based on culture. But like you say, like Asiya said, I mean, it's something that I think we're starting to break the molds of for all the right reasons. And even from an Islamic perspective, like I say, for all the right reasons also. Because when it comes down to rights in marriage, I think it's very easy to fall into this trap also where like the man has to provide, the woman has to look after the children, and there are elements of that. I mean, as science understands it and as religion understands it as well, between certain ages, a child is to be reared and brought up by the mother quite closely because those nurturing years are quite important. But then the father's role comes in a little bit later, and that needs to be something as well. And of course, even in terms of rights, if we're talking about the man being the provider, we now forego those rights. If someone wants to live in Western normality, there needs to be two incomes being brought into the household, and everyone's buying into that nowadays because you have to. But then there's no...
Not even just for that reason sometimes, right? You know, independence is a big thing for women now, and it should be, you know, with the support of your spouse, you know, with the support of the household that you reside in, if that's something that works for you both. Me and Imran have discussed this extensively on a podcast that we did a few years ago. But it's not just the fact that, you know, money is tight for most people now with the cost of living crisis and everything that's going on with the economy. It's also the fact that women need to have lives outside of the home sometimes, and that's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
no, definitely. And I think even maybe older marriages where maybe people of the ages maybe of our parents are coming of age now where they are breaking their own cultural stigmas that they've kind of been accustomed to for years, and they're seeing the flaws of it. I know a lot of marriages like that for again, older generations where they're breaking those molds now for reasons that their mental health has kind of taken a toll, having tried to fit within those molds, having tried to fit within those kind of boxes that they've created for themselves. And they're recognizing it being more culture than religion. And culture and religion are kind of a massive thing when it comes to marriages. I mean, say for instance, like looking for marriage nowadays. I mean, I think me and Asiya hear a lot about the fact that how hard it is. What do you hear about people looking for marriage in your kind of age bracket, young Muhammad?
In my age bracket, I know a couple of friends that are looking to get married, and
Most of your friends are unmarried, right?
I'm the only one in my age group, I think. I'm friends
The
with
only
that.
one, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But I know a couple of my friends that are looking to get married and they're struggling to find someone.
Okay. Why are they struggling?
That comes down to what you said at the start, like what they're looking for a woman, or a woman looks for a man. Like the Western world, like you're saying, everything's changed. But
Like too high
Yeah,
standards,
high
or
standards,
like
yeah.
too standards that are too rigid.
yeah,
People really limit themselves,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're looking nowadays, it's like, I want her to be like this, that, and the other. Principles is what it comes down to. At the end of the day, I mean, from an Islamic perspective, I mean, if two people like love each other, the interesting thing about marriage in Islam is, the hadith goes, if two people love each other, there's nothing better for them than marriage. It's interesting because it takes into consideration the fact that love can come before marriage, and it's. I say that to say that, I mean, sometimes the kind of boxes and limitations that we place in terms of finding a spouse as well is something, again, I'm using this word a lot, but we fall trapped to. And we're talking about kind of limitations in terms of standards, but also limitations in terms of interpretation sometimes of religion, where maybe it isn't what God has placed upon us as a burden. Sometimes we place an ungodly burden upon ourselves in terms of what we're looking for. Ultimately, the only thing is the person who you're looking for should be on their deen, right? That's like the only thing. Because everything else, in terms of what we spoke about, in terms of the self and understanding of the self and the standards that we set for ourselves, should be something that the individual finds of the freedom that God has given them. Like, God has given us unlimited freedom within the boundaries of halal and haram. What we choose to do in terms of just how maybe righteous and pious we are, how much tahajjud we might do, how much extracurricular ibadah we might do and stuff.
Extracurricular Islam.
Ibadah that we might do is up to us as individuals. But just because someone may not, like, say for instance, you do tahajjud and I don't, I'm not going to say that that's a barrier for marriage now. Like, if you're not going to pray tahajjud with me, I don't want to get married to you. No, that's not something.
No, it's, there's very clear fard that you have to do in Islam, and your fard is your obligation. That's your duty, your responsibility to be able to fulfill. And if you're doing those and you're willing to go on a journey to explore further and be better with your religion, as long as your fard is established, for me anyway, it's not it doesn't, all of the other additionals come as you grow. A lot of people now get married when they're really quite young. Nallo, I call him Nallo, his name's Muhammad. You got married when you were really quite young. Your wife is very young as well. But you guys, in the 2.5 years that you've been married, you've probably grown, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, within yourself, within Islam, with each other, all of that kind of thing. All of that's very important. But yeah, tell us one way how you've grown.
I feel like I was quite stubborn before I got married. After about 6-7 months or so, again, like you guys were saying, agreeing to disagree. So I felt like I got a lot more calm and still trying to better myself every day, like everyone should. But I don't see it as like something that I'm forced to do. Just like happens like over time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And a great point that's just kind of been brought to my attention is the fact that a lot of the younger generation these days are looking for their other halves through, like we mentioned earlier, the digital mediums like social media, Muslim dating apps, and it doesn't give you the truest reflection of an individual, because what you're putting on there is basically a CV, in the sense of
It's like you're looking for a job.
What you
It's
like,
so
what you
strange.
don't like, what you want, what you don't want, and all these kind of things. It doesn't give you the most accurate reflection of who the individual you're going to meet is. We're not who we are based on what we put down on paper. We are who we are based on the interactions. Because I'm not going to be the same person that I am to you as a husband or to you as a brother.
And remember, people showcase their best online. Nobody puts up bad stuff online. Everybody puts up their best online. So you've got to be mindful of that. You know, for the youth out there that are listening, we're no longer youth.
No.
But as we've established, all right, we're no longer youth, apparently, according to my brother, because I'm 34. It seems that people fall trapped to this idea of you're going to get exactly the person that's listed on this Muslim dating app or on this I don't know if you can call it a dating app, but whatever they are, or a social media site or whatever, wherever it is that you found this person, that is their peak of their life that's on there. Nobody puts out bad stuff. Be mindful of that.
Yeah, no one puts out their bad stuff. And the reason why you probably don't see me posting a lot on social media is because that's not how we live life. Like, life is like, it's easy to now live a very digital life. Like, digital, it's where it's kind of popping off, like in terms of being able to gain traction. And people sometimes even say, like, if people aren't posting on social media, I don't feel like I really know them. But are you even living life outside of social media? And when you're living life outside of social media, are you living life outside of social media for social media? Or are you living life solely for life?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like, that's why I say I don't really kind of post a lot, and I don't like to post a lot, because it just feels very artificial.
Yeah.
It feels very forced. It feels very fake.
And you can feel yourself, like even me, when I post, regardless of what it is, you can feel yourself falling trapped to that idea of, oh, let me just check my phone to see if anyone's liked my picture or my reel or my this or my this. I'm a Ramadan Instagram person. I pop onto Instagram Ramadan to Ramadan. I share stuff, generally the things that pop up. I do check my Instagram, but I'm active on Instagram in Ramadan because I'm a fundraiser.
Yeah.
So fundraising is key during Ramadan. So I pop onto Instagram every Ramadan. And recently I posted up some reels for auctions, and even me being as wise and as grown as I am, I was checking my feed constantly to see, mainly for bids, but checking likes, checking who's commented, checking what's going on. Do people like it? I put effort into the content that I've created, and so it just so happens that I've done it for that reason. But I sound like I'm making excuses now, which I probably am. It's also for the ego.
But social media for me is just that tool for example, that fundraising that you're talking about.
Here's me and you oldies that are talking about social media. What does the young gun think?
I'm not even on social media now, to be honest.
He's married now. You don't need to be.
I know that about Nallo as well, because he's not a social media guy.
No, but you're not. But what do you think to the point about this whole social media thing?
I think everything's on social media. The whole world nowadays is controlled by social media.
Yeah. If you're not living a life, like I say, on social media, for some people, you're not living life at all. And it's, like I say, it's great to use it as a tool to be able to maybe push forward certain objective kind of situations, like we said, fundraising, and putting out information, facts, advertising, marketing, whatever, all these kind of things. And also, there's no problem at all. I'm not saying that social media is bad if you use it on a personal level to kind of post your food, post pictures of yourself, post how your days go in, this, that, and the other. But when you place the emphasis upon that, and that becomes everything, is when the problem arises. And that's kind of like, sometimes at Eclectic House, we really hate this word balance, but I like to use it here. It's where you have to strike a balance. So yeah, it's one of those things. So I'm getting a message here. Let me just read it. You guys can fill in the blanks, please.
We can continue. So I've had a few messages as well on my Instagram. Zainab's been popping off on my Instagram about how her man's going to cook for her, and how, Imran needs to say it louder for the people in the back when he's making a point for the women. It's great.
So the message that's coming across to me right now is the fact that certain people in society, for example, disabled people, or people who are more vulnerable, or people who are less maybe integrated within the norms of society, and I put that in kind of like air quotes as well, find it difficult and get shunned away by society. And it's a really heartbreaking situation because they're capable too, but our generation can't see it. What I think that's saying is the fact that society And life in general has created this kind of box where it's the bare
Certain
bones
things are
foundation.
acceptable.
There's apparently a foundation of sorts what the ideal candidate for marriage or a spouse needs to fit for the bare basics. They need to maybe have this certain level of akhlaq or this certain level. The Quran says there's good men for good women and bad men for bad women. Like it's like for like in that situation, like where we talked about, like you meet individuals who are on the levels that it's not fair for me to say, if I'm not the most practicing individual, that I want someone who's on their deen, prays 5 times a day, this, that, and the other. You're talking about levels up here whilst you're down here kind of thing. I'm doing it for the camera. And like, you're not going to grow. I mean, you might be able to. I'm not saying that's not even a possible situation, but then that needs to be explicitly understood within that context. If that is a situation where you're like here and here, and that's usually not the case. Most people are always kind of like at even levels, and they grow accordingly. And I think that's a very evident for mine and Asiya's marriage. And I think just based on outside view for your marriage as well, Muhammad, like it's a similar kind of thing. You grow together and that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's very, I guess this is for people to kind of shine a light upon themselves. Like if they're maybe struggling in marriage, that point that I've just made in the fact that certain people you're shunning away and you're turning a blind eye to, when maybe they're the best people that Allah's put in your life, consider the fact that you might not like something, but it's actually good for you. And the thing that you think is actually good for you isn't. Again, that's from Quran, that's from Islam. Like you have to consider that, because it's not always about the fact of what you think is right for you and what you think is good. This is why sometimes you have to let go of that kind of element of the self and say, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I'm going to leave it to Allah, who Allah brings into my life and who I kind of mesh with, because the ego or the nafs might say, no, this person's not as good looking enough. I get along with them so well, like our souls are intertwined and there's love there. But because they don't look a certain way and do a certain job or give off a certain image and all these kind of things, I'm not going to consider it. It's the worst possible thing that you could do, right?
Yeah.
And again, it comes down to kind of understanding of the self, and then through understanding of the self, setting the correct kind of standards. Again, standards sometimes that you might think aren't good, but are actually objectively good for you in terms of maybe elements of deen, and also objective truth in the sense of from a worldly matter, like individuals sometimes overlook the fact that this person isn't able to maybe fulfill certain rights that I want fulfilled, like maybe providing for me and this, like, and the other. They're so in love maybe with the way that they look. And there's stages of love like this. I mean, people talk about the kind of honeymoon period and infatuation and kind of falling head over heels over someone. And that element of love as a drug can be a factor which brings you to your ruin, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think at Eclectic House, everything, regardless of whether we're talking about love, stress, anxiety, depression, all the other kind of mental health kind of taboos and contemporary issues that we face nowadays, it always comes down and boils back down to the self. Understanding the self, and of course from an Islamic framework, we understand the self from a spiritual, mental and physical perspective. Spiritually based on your heart, so your nafs, your ego, and physically based on kind of like the actions that you do and whether they're in alignment to your spiritual state and your mental state. Like we call it kind of the science of the gaps, or God of the gaps, as we've coined it sometimes as well. And it's the connection between your physical and mental actions, your spiritual and mental states as well, in terms of how you feel and what you think, and mental and physical in terms of what you think and what you do. And sometimes people have kind of a state of wishful thinking, like they say, I want this amazing person, I want this kind of person, I want someone who's like this, that, and the other. But then they don't actually go out and do the work. They don't emanate the qualities or characteristics of the individual who they want to be. So if you're not putting out a certain, and people would call it like the law of attraction, but from an Islamic perspective, we understand it from point of view of Allah is as His believers see Him. Allah is as His believers see Him. If we see Allah as this kind of giving, kind of beneficent and loving and caring, and He can do anything kind of individual, we embody those qualities for ourselves. And I mean, there's a lot more that I could kind of say about it, but I'll leave it at that. And inshallah, if people want to kind of reach out and speak about it more, they can do. But yeah, I mean, how do you guys feel about that? I mean, is that facts, or am I just chatting waffle?
Well, you usually chat waffle, but this is okay. Imran, for those of you who didn't see it, has just dropped water all down his beard, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and yeah, that whole element, I can't stress it enough, because we really don't talk about it enough. There's someone on Instagram live laughing at me.
Yeah, well,
it is.
Don't air them. Do it.
I'm not going to air them.
I would.
It's my sister.
Atika, good one, babe.
Yeah, I mean, I can't stress enough the fact of how important it is, just kind of the introspection, the self-reflection, and pondering upon the self. The Quran speaks about it massively, where do they not think, and do they not think for themselves, or do they not look within themselves? The element of introspection in terms of being real with yourself, because we have the ability as humans to lie to ourselves. We have the ability to lie and delude and disillusion and kind of lie to ourselves, in the sense of the fact where sometimes we think we live in a certain type of life where we're really not. Sometimes we think we're being the best kind of individuals where we're really not. Our akhlaq and our adab maybe isn't to the point where we think it is, or we like to project all our insecurities externally, where no, it's this person's fault or it's that person's fault, and rarely do we ever kind of push the blame back onto ourselves. So again, when I talk about the fact of like focusing on the self, pondering upon the self, and really being honest, it is a matter of kind of just like sitting with yourselves as individuals. Now, me and Asiya can speak about this massively, because we've had maybe a period of time where our individualistic journeys has become massively important rather than our journeys as a whole. As much as me and Asiya are very interconnected and love spending a lot of time with each other and all these kind of things, the element of focusing on ourselves and being able to have that period of introspection is massive. And I think Asiya will be able to speak about it more, because she's, I guess, I want to say, fairly newer to it than I am.
I am, yeah. I really struggled to spend time by myself. I had to have it drilled into me by my therapist, who is now Imran's business partner or teacher or whatever you want to call him. Khalil Qasim is my what is he? A psychiatrist? Something? He's a therapist,
he's a
counselor,
we're all teachers.
Whatever.
Everyone at Eclectic House, we're all teachers. We're simply teachers, and Allah's the guide.
He teaches me about my brain and what's good and what's not good and all of that kind of thing. But anyway, I digress a little bit there.
But how beneficial was
absolutely massive? I couldn't spend
and the time spent with yourself.
I couldn't spend 30 seconds alone with myself at one point in time. I had to have something. I had to have my phone. I had to have the TV on. I had to have something or the other there. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit still. And Khalil said something really interesting to me that really opened my eyes to it, and I started doing it, believe it or not, 30 seconds at a time. You know, this was after, for those of us who know as well and know our story, this was after Yahya had passed. And he said to me that if I can't in this world spend even 30 seconds without fidgeting, without my phone, without something or the other distracting me from my own thoughts, how am I going to do it in the grave when I'm all by myself and I don't have anything to distract me from what's going on there? And that scared me absolutely straight. It was, I don't know what it was, a switch flicked in my brain, and I thought, you know, I'm going to be in the grave possibly a lot longer than I'm going to be alive in this world. And if I don't teach myself now, that's going to become something that I struggle with later on. And I don't want to have a struggle in the grave. And so I started doing, these 30-second bouts of just sitting still or sitting by myself. And that's how I learned to just be with my own thoughts. Initially, it was extremely hard. I cried and had tantrums and all sorts of things. And now, alhamdulillah, I can. Imran's going to be going for itikaf, alhamdulillah, this Ramadan. He goes on Saturday. Keep him in your du'as. Keep me in your du'as.
My first itikaf.
His first itikaf. But I'm not shook by that now because...
Whereas in the past, maybe you would have been.
I would have been, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Production, can we have extra time? Yeah, we can have extra time, okay. Thank you. We're getting into the flow of the conversation, so we may as well carry on. You all right? Yeah, he's okay. First stint on the radio. Okay.
But yeah, I love that. But Muhammad,
somebody has said, Almighty accept both your efforts, inshallah.
Jazakallah. It means the most. Du'as are the most powerful thing, especially during this month. But hearing everything that we're talking about, yeah, and I have an opinion, but I don't want to hold my opinion against you. How do you feel about what we're talking about in terms of the self and the introspection, all that?
I'm very guilty for this. I don't spend no time by myself.
It's in the Parekh blood, mate. Yeah. This is the problem. We're all built the same, all of us. I've noticed it time and time again. Me and my brother, for those of you who don't know us very well, we're 10 years apart. We have a big old gap of 10 years difference, like he was reminding me earlier today. If you can see him on the camera, he's proper smile. Look at his teeth. Look at him. We've got a 10-year age gap, but we are probably the most similar out of the three siblings that we are. And both of us are more like our dad than we are our mum. May Allah ease his strains in the grave and forgive him. He's no longer with us, but both of us are exactly like my dad. We have such similar traits. And one of those traits is this not being able to sit still by yourself. Yeah? Agree?
Definitely.
Have you ever had a period of time where introspection and self-reflection played a massive role and you were kind of forced into it and something? And how did that experience shape and change, or how do you think about that?
I don't think I've ever given myself, since I've been married, I don't think I've ever given myself that time, to be honest.
No?
Dua's laughing in the background. It's her fault.
Considering what we're talking about and how we're speaking about it, is it something that you want to kind of work towards? Is it something that you want to do?
Yeah, it's something that I should be doing.
What do you feel are the barriers that what makes it difficult for you to do?
I think one of the main things is because I'm so into my daily routine, used to doing everything that I'm doing, like work, home, spend time with my wife, repeat again, go to sleep. It's just something that I need to drill into my life, something that I need to...
It's about making time, right? Sometimes, making time is a matter of we'll make time for what we want to make time for. What we tend to say from a mental health perspective is that our cups are overflowing a lot of the time, and they're overflowing with a lot of the time, sometimes maybe the wrong things and things that we just think are important. And if we think that this element that we're speaking about is important, a lot of the time, like I say, we'll make time for what we want to make time for, but we have to empty the cup of everything first. And emptying the cup is sometimes the most important step to take before you start filling it up with things that you feel are important. Like you say, external things like work, family, all these other matters in our lives take up importance, but you can't be your best self if you're not in your kind of best position, if you're not in your element, so to speak. So making that time is first a case of saying, I'm not even able to be the best husband or the best son, or I'm not able to be the best wife, and all these kind of things.
But I am the best wife, right?
Of course.
Very good. Good answer.
Maybe not for anyone else.
I don't want to be a wife for anybody else. It's okay.
I don't want to be a husband for anyone else.
Stop that face. You're going to get beat up when you get home.
Is this something that you struggled with, when you got married first?
I've never struggled with spending time with myself, because I spent the most time with myself before marriage, and I love spending time with myself even within marriage, and Asiya knows this about me. And
Imran's his own best friend.
I am. I love my own company. And even people who are closest to me know that as well, because of the fact that I air people a lot of the time, and sometimes it is to my own detriment. Sometimes I can get lost in my inner peace.
Can we stop? Zainab, she's my girl. Asiya is the best thing that ever happened to you. to you.
I mean, Zainab, you don't know me beforehand, but okay, yeah, she is. You're
I
right,
am.
100%.
I absolutely am.
My sister's resonating with me as well. She's like, alone time is good for your self-care. Rawats, I think we're great at self-care.
You are, all of you are.
And taking time for ourselves and ensuring that what we call it at Eclectic House is principle one, which is our relationship with ourselves first and foremost, and then our relationships with Allah. And again, I mean, I know I place this emphasis from an Islamic perspective, and I don't want to kind of make it seem as though I'm just kind of spiritually bypassing everything by saying you just need to make sure you got a good connection with Allah, you're praying your salah, you're making dua, this, that, and the other. You can't do all of those things to your best degree if you're not even in connection or in tune with yourself. If you don't know what your capacity and your capability is to do all of those things, because Allah's made certain things compulsory, certain things non-compulsory, certain things nafil, certain things sunnah, all these kind of things, you have to kind of fulfill your bare basic obligations. But some people, let's take for instance salah, because that's the most like important thing for a lot of people, and it's the easiest thing to talk about. People will say, I need to pray my 5 times salah, I need to be able to pray my farz, I need to pray my sunnah and my nafils, and I'm going to pray all my 5 salah. You don't start off like that. Even if you're supposed to, say for instance, go into kind of like a journey outside of Islam, like for maybe college or whatever, you don't say, I'm going to be an engineer tomorrow, and boom, you're an engineer. You take the steps towards it, right? And it's the same thing in Islam as well. Islam talks about entering the religion gently, and everything about Islam is gentle and is easy and it's loving and caring. If your Islam is a burden for you, controversial here, but you're probably not doing it right. You have to do things slowly. Start off by doing your farz first, right? And start off by, if you don't pray any salah, it's fair to say, like, maybe you should start off with the easy things, where, like, you're praying maybe your Zohar, your Asr, your Maghrib. Fajr and Isha are usually the most difficult ones, and you look to maybe integrate those towards the end, because if you're starting off with the most difficult, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to put yourself in a position of failure, because you're not living up to your capacity and capability. Your capacity and capability can grow over time, but you need to be able to grow that in a comfortable manner. I think we've also in this day and age come to a point where we kind of want instant gratification. We want things here and now, whereas the human journey is something that requires time and space to be able to grow, and growth also requires conflict. So it's not to say that you're not going to go through any kind of difficult periods of time throughout these journeys and stuff, but through conflict comes growth. So I mean, it's a matter of understanding the emotions, and we speak about emotions a lot when it comes down to mental health as well. So building upon that element of the self. I mean, you can see where the layers are kind of like building in terms of, first you set kind of boundaries for yourself. You understand your emotions on an objective level. What we say is that there's no good and bad emotions. All your emotions are good. They just simply show you and help you to understand what's good for you, what's bad for you, because even anger, grief, sadness can be great kind of directive emotions to show you maybe, like for example, stress and anxiety, what you're kind of struggling with, what you need to place maybe emphasis on kind of changing. For instance, say for instance is at work, you're facing stress and anxiety. You're going to do something different. You're going to either have a conversation with your manager, you're going to place certain systems in place where you may be going for breaks more frequently, or you're setting expectations correctly, and all these kind of things. Even when it comes to these personal matters in your life, say for instance you lose a loved one, which is I think easy for me and Asiya to speak about because we've gone through it, but like that, I always talk about the fact that
all
grief,
three of us.
Yeah, all three of us. We've gone through those motions, and it's the best thing that could have ever happened to me personally. It helped me to understand myself massively better. It placed questions on my radar that wouldn't have ordinarily been there. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that it was good and it was hunky-dory and rosy. It was the most difficult period of our lives, yeah, but the most difficult for all the best reasons. And I'm able to sit here now and speak about it in the light that I'm speaking about it, do the work that I'm doing right now, and all these kind of things because of the fact that I went through that. And it's an example of how the best kind of, like, flowers can bloom from concrete and from dirt. It's an example of that, metaphorically speaking. Again, I say all of this, and I know it might seem far-fetched and far distant from the topic of love and other drugs, as we're speaking about, but it's so massively in line with the whole element of the fact that you need to understand yourself to those levels to be able to then go to someone else and say, this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and do it in the best manner as well, not on a CV kind of level where I like rafting, I like going on holiday to Dubai, I like going out and eating and this, that, and the other. I want someone who's doing something similar to that as well. If you're not doing something similar to that, I don't want it.
That sounds
But
like
yeah.
you're reading out a girl's like dating profile or whatever.
It's sick. You guys, said,
genuinely,
you guys said it, because the fact is, a lot of people is like that. You know that. I didn't say it. It came out your mouth, so I'm glad you said it.
You did the impression well, though, love. You should be proud.
I don't want to say where I got it from, but yeah, I mean, it falls massively in line with that understanding of the self. And I want to also talk about now the whole element of the fact that love, I think I mentioned it at the start.
Zainab, bruh, speak for yourself.
About what?
Tell us, Zainab, about what?
Dial into the studio, Zainab. Dial into the studio
call in.
and let us have this conversation. You have a lot to say.
016-4822-086.
Yeah, dial in, Zainab, and we can have that conversation live on air.
Let me just, production, are you guys okay? Do you need to go home or anything? No, because, Imran can talk all night.
I can talk all night. But I wanted to talk about the fact that I think I touched upon it at the start about how love isn't a primary emotion. Love is an emotion that is made up of multiple secondary emotions. When I say that, what comes to your mind, Mohammed?
Wait, check your WhatsApp. Okay, you go. I'll check my WhatsApp.
I don't understand.
So love isn't a primary emotion. Love is an emotion that is made up of multiple secondary emotions. When you consider and think about love, is that just like the overarching, the one thing that has to be there in marriage?
No.
What else needs to be there?
Looking out for each other, like, you know how everyone says if my wife's going through something, then I'm going through the same thing, and vice versa.
Yeah.
It should be like my problem should be yours. It should be looked after in both ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole element of kind of consideration and kind of compassion that comes within marriage, and that's an element of love. Asiya.
I know the answer to this, but it's cheating because you told me earlier.
Okay.
Security is a big one.
Security is massive.
Companionship,
another great one. Security in the sense of maybe financial security, relationship security, materialistic security, there's
physical security.
There's multiple levels of security, and even in terms of compassion, like how do you show the compassion? What are your love languages? All those kind of things. Like people have multiple kind of love languages as well. And I talk about love not being a primary emotion because it is made up of security. It's made up of compassion. All these kind of other things, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot of other kind of emotions that tie into it. Because if you were to kind of try and to describe love by itself, how would you describe it otherwise? I mean, you guys are using all those words, and all those words are the emotions that kind of feed into it, right? It's the perspective that we take upon that as well then. I mean, taking when we put those on the map, when we put those words on the map, and when we take those words into consideration as the fact that they feed into love, is when we can kind of consider like, it's not, I mean, otherwise, like I keep coming back to this, like if you're putting on other things like, it needs to do, the person that I'm looking for needs to do this, that, and the other. They're great standards to have, like they need to be able to provide and stuff, but like consider them as kind of factors of love that are, I guess, your love languages or your standards of love and how someone can kind of reciprocate that. Because if you're saying, I need financial security, someone might come along and say, oh, I'm the kind of person that wants to be able to provide for you and for you to be able to kind of like stay at home, do your own thing. If you did want to go to work, I mean, I guess that's fine. I mean, maybe it's something I could compromise on. But if you're saying that you want to kind of be financially looked after, I want to do that as well. That's an element of love that we can see eye to eye on. Now, when we're talking about kind of like compassion, like if we're talking about like kind of how much time we spend together and all that kind of stuff, like, I want to go out with my mates this often, and I want to go like, oh, that's wicked, because I want to spend this much time with my friends and stuff like that.
What? 1 second, man. Production, are we out of time? No, we're still okay. Continue.
Okay. You keep adding like 5 minutes on. I just add another hour.
Just add a bit more time on.
So I mean, taking it seeing it from that perspective rather than from the fact, like, because obviously we've been harping on about the fact that people just put these things onto their kind of CV, their marriage CV and stuff like that. Don't see it as a kind of, I mean, if you see it from that different perspective now, in the sense of the fact that it's standards of love and love languages and all these kind of things, then you're maybe able to take it into consideration from a whole new realm, right? Am I right? Am I speaking Lulu?
Sometimes. No, I'm joking. Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. But Nello's been quiet, so you go. Your turn now.
When I say it like that, what do you think?
I don't know, to be honest.
I'm frying his brain. I'm going off on a tangent here.
So Zainab has said, everything Imran is saying, and then claps. People's perception of love these days is ridiculous. It's so much more than a feeling. It's true.
It is. It's so much more than a feeling. Like, we have to acknowledge the fact that us
I
as
think
individuals...
Mohammed Jusub's joined. Don't worry about production.
Jusub? Okay, forget it.
Is it Jusub? Is it you guys? No, God knows who it is now.
What I was going to say was that us as individuals...
Don't worry about production. They can stay all night.
It's bank holiday anyway. I'm sure they want to stay all night. They want to just stay on E Road and go out for Sahri.
We'll buy you tea, boys.
Yeah,
we'll buy some tea for you.
For sure. When it comes down to the element of the self, like, it's important to also consider, like, us as individuals, we're all very unique. Some of us might be more spiritually inclined. Some of us might be more physically inclined. Some of us might be more mentally inclined. Now, let's take into consideration what me and Asiya were saying about the fact that we have two very different ends of a spectrum. I might say that I'm more mentally and spiritually inclined, and Asiya is maybe more mentally, physically inclined, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we kind of play off of each other, because I could, for instance, spend so much time with myself, and I could kind of spend all the time with myself, and maybe to my detriment, actually not give enough time to my marriage. I'll be honest, and I'm going to put my hands up to that. The way that Asiya,
and then I'm the nagging wife.
And it's amazing how you say nagging, yeah, but how beneficial.
Hang on, wait.
Okay.
Whoever's on Ramadan FM's Instagram, like, literally show yourself, because this. Look at this. Don't worry about production. They can stay all night. When getting Love Doctor married, this is Jusub, 100% Jusub. To complete his deen. Who's Love Doctor?
Who's Love Doctor?
Are you talking about my husband Imran, who's talking? He is
no,
already
I am
married.
not Love Doctor. Oh.
I don't know.
No,
Can you clarify?
I'm not the Love Doctor.
There's no Love Doctor here, and everybody here is already married. Everyone.
Yeah, this is where the protective ghira comes in as well, and we talk about kind of protective jealousy. Islam talks a lot about protective jealousy between husbands and wives and stuff like that. Let's maybe get into that if we need to later down the line. But my point keeps getting interrupted. Now, what was I speaking about?
Sorry.
I was speaking about how, yeah, people can be more so inclined towards particular kind of temperaments. Now, if I get into temperaments, it's very dangerous territory, because people kind of like to fall into the trap of labels, like, oh, I'm an introvert, oh, I'm an extrovert, oh, I'm more so spiritual. But the truth of the matter is that as humans, we're holistically all three. We're physical, mental, and spiritual. Yeah, we might be more so spiritual, but I just explained about how I could kind of fall to the trap of that to my detriment, where I'd spend too much time with myself, get carried away in kind of divine peace and divine individuality, and not give enough time to my marriage. And that's how Asiya kind of brings to the table her kind of level of what she called nagging, but how that's something that's I might perceive as bad, but is actually good for me and all these kind of things, and how two different ends of the spectrum can bounce off each other and kind of bring that balance and bring that kind of level playing field to each other. And I think Asiya will kind of reflect the same, in the sense of, like, maybe her level of maybe extroversion or some level of what she called nagging, but how that's something that's I might perceive as bad, but is actually good for me and all these kind of things, and how maybe, as she mentioned earlier, two different ends of the spectrum can bounce off each other and kind of bring that balance and bring that kind of level playing field to each other. And I think Asiya will kind of reflect the same, in the sense of, like, maybe her level of maybe extroversion, as some people might put it, and I don't like using those terms, because I think we're all Muhammad Yusuf, and now
He's
you're kind of
taking
hindering
over.
my radio
Why
show.
don't you come? Why don't you come to the studio? You should be here. You're the reason why we're here.
Yeah. If you want to say anything, I encourage everyone to kind of dial in, or text in at the very least, so you can have a long form conversation with us. But yeah, did you hear what I said?
Yeah. Yes.
What did I say?
Imran does this to me all the time. Did you listen to what I said?
No,
Yes.
no.
What did I say?
See?
Yes.
This is where the masculine and femininity kind of opposes each other. Like,
Oh,
normally-
somebody wants to hear Nallo speak. Apparently, I talk too much. Continue. I don't know. Tibby_UK. I think she means you. She said the brother speaks, so it's either Imran or you, but Imran's been talking for the world, so probably you.
yeah, go ahead.
Into the mic.
I don't have much to say, to be honest.
You don't have much to say. You know what? My life just ended, man.
Your live ended.
Yeah, I need to go
Okay.
out again. Anyway, this whole element of what I'm talking about, like you speak about, and I think you and Asiya are very similar in the sense of like you're more so on the go, you're active, you're physically inclined in the sense of like you just do. You think and you do, and you're a man of action, right? I know for a fact that Dua, your missus, is very opposite to you as well, in a similar sense of how me and
Same
Asiya
as
are.
you two, yeah.
Yeah. How do you think that brings benefit to your marriage? How opposite she is to you?
You always have two opinions which are different to each other. So, like, she can see my point, and from my point of view, and then
Yeah.
I'll be able to see from her point of view.
Yeah. But this whole element of what we're talking about in terms of maybe spirituality, like, okay, your connection with yourself, like you spoke about earlier, is something that you need to focus on more. Do you think that you would struggle with that even more so if you weren't married to Dua?
Not as much, I don't think.
Why not?
What about the spending time with myself?
Yeah. The whole spending time with yourself, understanding of yourself, like obviously it goes a lot deeper than the
Yeah.
words that I'm using here.
Before I got married, I don't think I struggled with it that much. But it's just my daily routine just completely changed. And I've not really thought much of like going back into it, but I should have done that.
Okay.
And there's certain things that I maybe should have done different towards the start of my marriage that would still allow me to have that free time to myself.
But it's nothing you can't change now, right?
Something I can change, but just like need to get it drilled into my head.
Do you think Dua serves as something of a reminder for you to be able to do that? No?
In what sense do you think? What do you mean?
The fact that maybe she does spend a fair amount of time with herself.
Probably a lot more than what I do.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So this, by the way, is our final leg, yeah?
Final
Jusuf
leg.
is very keen that we let production go sleep. So he keeps messaging on my live, let production go sleep.
He's literally put that on my live as well.
Oh, I've had a message from Suel. I think for myself, I'm quite opposite. I like to spend too much time by myself.
It's
That's
exactly,
interesting.
It's a Rawat thing. This is what we're talking about in the sense of like we're very kind
But that's
of like
also, there's detriment there as well,
introspectively.
isn't there?
It
It's
is, there's massive
too much
detriment.
time is also
And this-
detriment.
And this is what we spoke about. Like, yeah, too much time is to a detriment. And I think it's easy to kind of fall on extremes of the spectrums when we don't kind of understand what drives us and what leads us towards that. Because I think now, for instance, even for me, I could very well fall on extremes of either side of the spectrum where I'm going out too much or I'm spending too much time by myself.
And your wife is nowhere to be seen. In the middle there somewhere.
Sometimes it does happen. Now, it's a matter of sometimes just you don't understand yourself maybe well enough to recognize where the balance lies, or you're not in recognition of yourself to the point where you can control the element of, we'd call it like the nafs or the ego, where you're in recognition. If you go down this path, you're going to burn yourself out by maybe being too active, or you're going to neglect the rights of everyone else around you because of the fact that you're not so active and you're spending too much time with yourself. If you're understanding of the consequences and then you still go ahead, that's all well and good. You've gone ahead with it regardless of the consequences. You pay the price of it, whatever. But if you don't consider the consequences because of the fact, again, you haven't had that kind of period of introspection and reflection on where your actions are going to lead you on a mental, physical, and spiritual level, and how it's going to affect the people around you, the rights of the people around you, and all these kind of things, then it's easy to bounce around. It's easy to bounce around. But I know we call this the last leg. I wanted to close on a couple of things. Again, I think within kind of the journeys of ourselves, within the journeys of marriage, it's easy to focus so greatly on the kind of external in terms of what we want, what we don't want from the other person, and push our kind of standards and what rights we want and all these kind of things, because we hear all these kind of stories sometimes, and that the most important thing that I feel that anyone can do for themselves, and I think all of us here in the studio can kind of attribute our success in love to this, is that we were very selfish and we were very kind of focused on ourselves as individuals, which is why the external, which is love, like love is an external matter, relationships and marriage are an external matter, because we were, like you said, Muhammad, before your marriage, so easily kind of focused on yourself. I know that for you as an individual, on your level, Asiya, even as on your level as an extrovert, so to speak, or whatever it was.
What did you just call me?
And also on my level, where I was maybe more so in a period of like seclusion and stuff like that, they all have the same similarities in the sense of where we focused on ourselves, and of course when we come to speaking about the self, we can't separate Allah from that as well. But I don't want to say that we were all on these kind of high spiritual levels where we were connected with Allah, because let's be honest, we weren't. But we recognized who we were in the face of Allah in terms of where we were at that point in time. And we recognized what we wanted, what we didn't want, and all these kind of like things that we're talking about in terms of pondering, reflection, principles, standards, all these kind of things. Because we were so focused on ourselves, seeking out the external was easy because we were so sincere and authentic in who we were. It attracted the like in terms of what Allah put in our paths. So if I can give everyone something to kind of take away, and I'll close on this note before I hand over to you guys to close on your notes, is to at least today, at some point, tonight or tomorrow, over this bank holiday period, take a period to think about how you can, in a sense, be more selfish, focus on yourself, and focus on your relationship with yourself. If you want to call it self-care, call it self-care. And maybe take the onus and the responsibility and accountability and all the kind of push that we put on the external and bring that to the internal.
Yeah. I'll just read out a couple of these that I've got. The person that wanted to hear you speak, Nalo, said, it's all about communication, finding a balance and caring for each other, making time for one another, but most importantly, having time personal time to spiritually connect. I think that means to say, yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. Zainab, again, you two are goals, man, mashallah. Aw, cute. The reason why I got a little bit ratty there, Imran never calls me Asiya, so apologies for the abrupt, what did you just call me? That was the problem there. I'm never, ever called Asiya, ever. So that's what happened there. But yeah, Imran's right in everything that he said. And you know, marriage is a lifelong thing. And if you go into it with the wrong foundation, or you establish the wrong foundation to begin with, you know, if you're not cool with yourself, if you're not cool with Allah, if you're not in the right state of mind, whatever that might look like, that won't set a good foundation for you, and things tend to be a bit rocky and you will struggle more. That's not to say that it can't work, of course it can, but try and start off in the right way and put yourselves forward in the best possible way to be able to find a spouse, and thereafter. That would be my closing remark.
Go on, give us your 1 minute of nuggets of wisdom.
Okay, so this is a note to myself as well. Everyone, including myself, needs to give time to yourself to reflect on everything that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, that's spiritually and mentally. And again, like when we're speaking about not just love in your relationship, but looking after one another, being there for one another. But everything also comes down to how you feel as a person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the principles that make love what it is and what feeds into love.
Well, let us know if you want to see us again.
Yeah, Jazakallah to everyone who's tuned in today for our long-winded conversation, and Jazakallah.
And thank you, production.
Jazakallah to our production team. Jazakallah to Ramadan Radio for giving us the platform. Jazakallah to all who tuned in and allowed us to speak on this topic. And if you want to catch up with more from me or Asiya, you can catch us on our socials. Mine is Imran.Rawat and Asiya's is Asiya.Parekh. And you can also catch more in terms of mental health at the Eclectic House socials, eclectic.house. And you can find my teacher, Khalil, at khalil.qasim94.